Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Anselmo versus Stuff, a show where I come on my phone while I'm at work on a busy day when I need something to post, and I come and talk about some stuff maybe you guys are interested in. Mostly video game stuff because I like video games. And speaking of me liking video games, today I wanted to talk about really what is retro video gaming in general, because it's gone through so many definitions, hell, in the past couple of years, that it's really hard to pin down. And I just wanted to kind of talk about it because it's not only a part of my hobby life, but it's part of my work life too. I work at an undisclosed vintage video game store. Not going to tell you where. But so I do have kind of a certain perspective that I just wanted to kind of share with you guys. And if you guys have any comments or anything, be sure to check it down below. I'll talk with you on the virtual text thing. But yeah, let's start with really the term, label, whatever you want to call it, of retro video games. What exactly does retro like? First of all, I'm not a huge fan of the term retro video games. Mostly just because I hear it so many times that I don't want to say it sounds demeaning, but it kind of takes away from it. It's a belittling title to me. But I think that's just for me personally, just because I hear it so much at work and stuff. You almost saw where I worked. I don't want to give away the surprise. I'm not going to tell you. But yeah, retro video games. I did say vintage video games. I tend to like to say vintage video games, even though that even carries with it amount of like a presumption, like, oh, I play vintage video games. Yeah. So there's the title, retro video games. And then that brings into, when does a video game become a retro video game? This is a nice topic because it's really just depend. It's a person to person thing, really. Because I mean, for me personally, something is not considered retro until probably I'd say 2 generations. Some people would say 1 generation back. I'd say at least 2 generations back. So for me, a lot of people will say that PS2 is retro, which I don't agree with that. So that doesn't strictly adhere to my 2 generation rule either. No, that's true. But yeah, 2 generation back, PS1 has become retro for me. It's really just based on when you were born, when you started playing video games. Are you still playing modern video games? I think it's a really interesting question because I think everybody has their own. Everyone has their own little definition of what can be considered or what is considered a retro video game. And you can even, it's like technology. Like some would even say that once, like the threshold is like polygonal gaming. Whenever sprite work went over to polygons, in the PS2 era, that was when modernity begins, pretty much. And then anything before that is considered retro or vintage. Personally, I adhere to the 2 generation rule. So PS2 is not considered retro for me. I just don't like the word retro. It's just oversaturation is what it is. I'm just sick. I'm sick of hearing the term retro. Every time I hear it, it just carries an air of like condemnation and retro, or like I can't explain it. I'm not a big fan of the word. And I'm not a huge fan of the word vintage either. I don't know what to call it. You know what I call it? Video games. Video games. But alas, we're not here to talk about the unification of labels. We're here to talk about what retro gaming is. And really going on with the topic, let's talk about the hobby itself. The hobby of playing. Well, let's start with the hobby of playing retro video games. Why? I've had people ask this, like, to me, like, why do you play older video games, especially, excuse me, when newer video games are technically and mechanically and aesthetically far superior? Why do you go back to play the old games? And it's a legitimate question. For me personally, this is another question that sorry, I got a little allergy congestion going on today. For me, it's like the previous question. It's really a matter of when you started playing video games, why you started playing video games, why you continued playing video games. Because really, there's multiple reasons, really, why someone would either continue playing older video games or start collecting older video games. And we're going to talk about collecting here in a little bit. Really, why I play older video games, it's a different kind of experience altogether. Not just an aesthetic difference, not just a mechanical difference, not just a technological difference, but there's a gameplay difference. There's gameplay aspects that you're not going to find in modern video games. You're just not. Now, you might be able to find them in some of the modern independent titles and stuff, because they're bringing back some of those older gameplay models that people legitimately forgot were really fun. And they might get condemned. The gameplay might be condemned because it's, simple, but simple doesn't mean bad, guys. And then there's also like the just the cultural significance. It's like the same reason people collect comic books. I always kind of use an analogy. For example, when people come in to the store and they ask, why is game X so expensive? This game is like $130. Why is game X $130? And I always use the analog of comic books, because it really does have a lot to do with not just sorry guys, I keep coughing. It has a lot to do with not just the not just the scarcity, because I mean there are prices that have to do with scarcity, but there's also a matter of like social significance. So there's a lot of reasons why you would play. I kind of got off point, but there's a lot of reasons why you play video games, and especially older video games. And part of the reason for me is really like I like the cultural significance. I like to see where, because I play new games too, and I play all games really. I like to see, I like to see the growth. I like to see where genres come from. I like to see where subgenres broke off from. I like to see where gameplay norms were birthed, where aesthetic things were brought in. I like to dig into the history of this stuff. Now collecting is a whole nother thing. Collecting, I have a story about collecting. Basically, I really started playing retro video games again, probably in 2008, 2009. And I remember when I started again, I'm like, I'm just gonna buy the ones I used to play. And I started, my first one I rebought was Mario Brothers 2 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. My personal favorite Mario game. I know it's pretty cool, but yeah. And I remember telling myself, I'm not going to be one of those collectors. I'm moving the camera around. I'm not going to be one of those collectors that just buy stuff to put on the shelf I'm gonna be the type of collector who just buys cool, like the ones he wants to play. I'm gonna collect to play. But 6 years later, 7 years later, I've slowed down. Okay, I've slowed down, guys. Okay, I'm not spending a lot of money anymore. But there was a time where I was dropping mad money on a lot of video games. So I have hundreds and hundreds of video games, NES, mostly NES games. But yeah, it's funny because I remember when I first started, I'm like, I'm not going to be one of those people. But now I'm one of those people. It's addicting. Now I'm addicted to like buying box games and stuff. It's a sickness. It's a sickness. But yeah, I just wanted to come on here and talk about retro video games. What retro video games means to you. I want you guys to counter me or comment down below. Tell me what you consider retro. Tell me why you play retro video games. And if you collect retro video games, tell me why you collect retro video games. This is very interesting to me. So, yeah, this has been another episode of me in my car on my break at work, a.k.a. Anselmo versus Stuff. Thanks for watching, guys.